The ending to a movie, you walk out of a theater and you feel better about the movie. I always felt that Usual Suspects was an average movie with a great last 12 minutes. You walk out of the theater and you're like, man, that is some movie. I thought Castaways with Tom Hanks was a much better movie with a dicey ending, and I left the theater and I thought, that's disappointing. How something ends kind of changes history. The old joke, if you can have a good 3 or 4 opening minutes on a date and the last 10 minutes are okay, you get a second date. Like, don't blow the beginning of the end. Seattle's funny. I'm from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest. I've been very critical of the Seahawks. But by beating the Rams yesterday, it validates so many of the things they've done. The NFL's all young, hotshot coaches. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Cliff Kingsbury. You just gave 69-year-old Pete Carroll an extension? Yeah, he's still the king of the division. He certainly won yesterday. Russell Wilson's contract, $35 million. You're saying he's Patrick Mahomes good? Yeah, there were 2 drives in the whole game that decided the division. Russell at the end of the first half, Russell at the end of the game. They were both great. The only 2 drives of the whole football game for Buck and Aikman, and Russell had both. I mean, I can't believe you traded those first-round picks for Jamal Adams. I don't know. I watched yesterday. He's, like, really important. Carlos Dunlap is unhappy in Cincinnati. Last thing you need is an unhappy Bengal on your team. I don't know. Carlos Dunlap has helped energize the defense. It's like all the questions about the Seahawks get validated after they win. Whoever wins the war gets to write the book on it. Pete's a little old. Russell's a little expensive. Jamal, the first-round picks. Carlos Dunlap, man, they took some big risks in free agency. Yeah, and you watch them this morning, and you're like, yeah, they're right. And the Rams, conversely, who we thought were the smartest people in the world a year and a half ago, now you're like, what do you do with that Goff contract? Man, they are wasting that defense. They don't have another first-round pick to solve their issues again. I don't want to overvalue it because the Rams play, I think it's Arizona next week. They're going to win that football game. They're going to get into the playoffs. But sometimes a game, we call it overreaction Monday. You come into the NFL and you feel like, a win makes everything right and a loss ruins everything. And the Rams and the Seahawks, they're still fairly even football teams. Rams have had their way a few times against the Seahawks. I thought the Rams would win this weekend. They were off a humiliating loss. But for all the Seattle criticisms, the one thing they did, and it's almost unheard of in the NFL, the Seahawks took a weakness, and they didn't have an offseason. In the middle of a season, they fixed it, and it's become a strength. That almost never happens in the NFL. You can have a flaw and Band-Aid and Bondo it, kind of solve it, hide it, but you don't go from the worst kicking game to the best in a season. Seattle's now gone from like a no pass rush, looked like the Tennessee Titans, literally no pass rush, to a top 5 pass rush, to being led around by Russ Wilson in the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season, now being carried by the defense. Here was Jamal Adams after the W.
For everybody out there, they got to start putting respect on this defense's name because this defense is playing lights out. And to me, we're the best defense in the league. And you can quote that. You can do what you want to do with it. But at the end of the day, I believe in these guys. I believe in this coaching staff.
Yeah. A weakness to a strength, and all Seattle's big gambles, Russ and Pete's contract and the DK Metcalf and the Jamal Adams trade and Carlos Dunlap coming over. This morning, you win the division, you write the book about it. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, the Steelers won their division. They looked to be on their way to a 4th straight loss for a moment. They were down
for a moment.
17 points for a moment.
For 2 hours.
For a moment. They were down to the Colts by 17 points in the third quarter, but they rallied with 3 straight touchdowns to win 28-24 and clinch the AFC North. It's Pittsburgh's first division title since 2017, which is also the last season that they made the playoffs.
That was by the way, that was the biggest throw in 6 weeks for the Steelers. Big Ben finally threw the ball down the field. And it was that play where I thought, okay, finally, 6 weeks, no deep balls.
That was the whole point of the game to me. Like, this is what they've been struggling to be able to do, despite the fact that they have these receivers. They can't get the running game going because nobody respects their game down the field.
And
so
they hit that first one.
And hit it.
And then they went, and it was almost like that ignited this belief that let's go over the top.
It was a 39-yard touchdown pass to Deontay Johnson and a 34-yard completion to Chase Claypool. That was the story of the game to me, and it's been the story of the Steelers season. If you don't throw it over the top, defenses don't feel the need to respect that. They can stop the run very easily and force you to throw these dink and dunk passes, which has caused a lot of the drops. So continue to do this. Try this next week. You won the division.
This looked like the Steelers.
Yeah.
Over the top. In my whole life, Bradshaw to Big Ben. They've always been physical. It's always been a thing. They've always been physical. Cowher was physical. Tomlin's physical. Both guys looked like they could play. But they've always been a big play, over the top, home run hitting offense. And for like 11 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, they weren't. And people say, you've been ripping the Steelers. Well, their second half is what I saw early in the year when we bought into them in like September.
Right. And they have not had an explosive running game since Le'Veon Bell. So you kind of need to rely on throwing it over the top. They had 20 total yards running. James Conner had 5 carries for 20 yards. Benny Snell had 6 carries for no yards. Now, James Conner had a red zone touchdown, but that's not going to get it done. You're going to have to throw it over the top.
1.4 yards a rush is still a massive. You can't win playoff games with that.
You cannot.
Can't.
But they play the Steelers. The Steelers play the Browns next week.
I like the Browns. I do.
The Browns have to win to get into the playoffs.
I think they will. I think Cleveland's. You can't get too caught up. They're going to have their receivers back. And listen, Cleveland's a good team off a humiliating loss. Baker will play well. I still contend. I think the Colts this morning are still better than the Steelers, although they lost to them. And the Browns lost to the Jets, but I think they'll beat the Steelers. I've been saying this for a month now. Cleveland's better than Pittsburgh.
I would agree that the Browns will beat the Steelers because they have to. So they're playing for more. The Steelers have won the division. Obviously, they want to continue to win going into the playoffs, but the Browns have to win this game. I don't think the Colts are better than the Steelers, though. I think the Colts are very inconsistent, and Phillip Rivers has massive limitations. So Tom Brady led the Bucs to a huge 47-7 win over the Lions. Ooh.
His numbers now.
It was done in the first quarter.
His numbers now. We both thought he would have kind of a Matt Ryan-esque year. He's having closer to an Aaron Rodgers normal year. Like, he's lighting. I know it's Detroit, but somebody's got to play him. Everybody else is playing Detroit, too.
Yeah, exactly. He had 348 yards and 4 touchdowns all in the first half. The win clinched the team's spot in the playoffs for the first time since 2007. And even though they will be a wild card team, Bruce Arians is confident knowing that anything can happen in the playoffs.
Anything can happen. I've been a 6 seed, gone all the way to the Super Bowl and won it, and right here in this stadium. And so anything's possible. And now that we're in a dance, we got to see what next week brings and where we're going.
Yeah.
They'll clinch the 5 seed with a win against the Falcons next week.
They have.
They would also get the 5 seed if the Rams lose to the Cardinals.
They've also, I think, found a little bit of an identity. They're going back heavy to Mike Evans, which is really, don't have Rojo, but I think the story of this year has been kind of a lack of an identity offensively, where there's a lot of disparate parts and nobody knows how they fit. It does feel like Mike Evans is their one. Then they go to AB, then Godwin, then Gronk, and it kind of feels like
that's how it should be.
Yeah, it just took a long time to get there, but no preseason. This is how it works.
Exactly. Finally, what a game, Dolphins-Raiders Saturday. Ryan Fitzpatrick was the hero for the Dolphins. I have lots of thoughts on how this all played out, but he replaced Tua with just under 10 minutes left in the fourth. Miami was down by 3. He then led the team on 3 consecutive scoring drives, including the one that set up the game-winning field goal in the final seconds. The Dolphins got the 26-25 win and can clinch their playoff spot with a win over the Bills next week. Tua was 17 of 22, 94 yards, 1 touchdown before Fitzpatrick came in and went 9 for 13, 182 yards and a touchdown. And Brian Flores did say that Tua will be the starting quarterback next week. And the Raiders are now officially eliminated. Now, I know everyone is having a lot of mixed reactions to what Flores did here. Is it good for Tua?